Hello and welcome to Murder Analysed. I'm Christina Moore. Now today's case is the Hannegret Donnelly case. Now this is Aylesbury, Buckinghamshire, UK, and the date of the crime was in March 2018. So again, another domestic abuse case, and I think you either know this case from the woman that murdered her husband due to domestic abuse, or the rolling pin murder. So anyway, let's have a look at this. So the German-born Hannegret met Christopher Donnelly in about 1992. They married. They had 4 children, and they were Christians. And she lived her life, as she states, as a Christian. And I think, you know, this case is a significant case when it comes to men not saying anything about being abused within the home. So it's a really important case, and it's a serious case, and it's a case that should be noted and should be, you know, talked about, because this happens a lot. I think over 800,000 incidences in the United Kingdom per year are just on victims of domestic abuse being the male victim in that relationship, whether that's male on male or female on male. It's about the male that is now being abused. Okay, so it's a very serious issue, this. So anyway, Christopher Donnelly, he was an educated man, a very nice man, a placid man, a Christian man. He'd married this woman. He loved her. He cared for her. He was he was a music teacher. He played the flute and the clarinet. He was also a biochemist earlier on in his life. So a very educated man, but a very placid man, a very nice man. And he marries this woman, and I think all of their married life, she was the dominant force in this relationship. There was abuse, I think, domestic abuse throughout their marriage, especially in the later years. But she's convicted, I think, on the crimes that she undertook on him between the 30th of March 2016 and the 30th of March 2018. Okay, so this is when this case then becomes so serious, that his injuries become so serious that he ends up dying from them. So she is a midwife, a trained midwife. I think that was in Germany she was trained. She was at home, married now in 1992 to Christopher, having these 4 children. She decided, and it was her alone that decided, that they didn't want technology in their home. She didn't want her children to be influenced by the outside world, again keeping even control on them, so they were homeschooled. They'd lived in this house, which is a housing estate in Aylesbury, and the neighbours really didn't know them. She didn't communicate with them. She didn't want anything to do with them, nor did he. He wasn't allowed. So this control, it seems that this control was going on for a very long time. And this lack of technology is where there's not many photos of him or her. There's really nothing. So they did have a landline, but it had been disconnected. But there certainly wasn't any mobile phones or anything in this home that he could have used at any point to call for help. Now at the time, I suppose when there was a bit of domestic abuse going on, not as serious as it was between the 2 years leading up to his death, but he did work, but he never said anything to anyone. He never told anybody about this abuse that was going on. He just really felt, I think, that it was his wife and that it was just her way, and he accepted that. But as then, I think the abuse on him leading up to March 2016 became so intense that he then became ill, and then he was actually disabled, because I think he was not only suffering physically, but he was suffering mentally from the abuse that this woman, his wife, was giving him daily. She would chase him around the table, she would hit him with objects, she would do lots of things leading up to this. But from 2016 to 2018, where this man was then disabled and could hardly walk, then he had to become more reliant on this woman, and that I think she found intolerable, because I don't think she despised him, but she liked the power. She liked to take control. She was the rule giver in that house. She decided what her children could and couldn't do. She decided what he could and couldn't do. And it even come down into that point of where she would hold him and not allow him to use the toilet. He would be begging, pleading with her to use the toilet because he couldn't get there on his own. And even if he could, if she said he couldn't go, he couldn't go. Now the reason we know all this, and the reason they know about the abuse and how the abuse now escalated, was because this woman, Hannegret, kept a diary of her abuse to this man, because she thought it was normal. And in her diary she wrote about him and about not allowing him to go to the toilet and about different things, what she hit him with. And it's a really shocking case, this, really, because this man was only 55-year-old when he died. Now the neighbours have said, no, they may not have seen him for them last couple of years, but when they did see him before, he already looked about 80. So he was already giving up on life. And I think that the disability comes from this abuse that he had suffered with this woman for years. Now we talked about abuse in the Aylesbury case, where she reacted to her abuser. This man didn't react. This man tolerated it. He, I think, in the end, his whole body, mind and soul, and physically and mentally, had given up. And he was dying, because now the abuse now in them 2 years became so bad that he then died. So on March the 31st, 2018, the police were called to the address, their address, the family home they shared with their children. Now the children in this home were at that time between 13 and 21. They would have witnessed this abuse, they would have seen this abuse going on, but they could not do anything. One, because they had no access to the outside world at all. Their phones, they had no phone. The phone in the home had been cut off. They had no mobile phones. They were out of school. They were being homeschooled by this woman. She was an enforcer in this home, and they did as they was told. Because I don't know if there was any abuse towards them, but they certainly saw the abuse towards their father, and they were certainly there the night that he died, and the night then, which would have been the 17th, would have been the 30th of March 2018, because what she did on that night was again hit him over the head and around the head and beat him with this rolling pin, pushed him down some stairs, chased him around the tables. You know, there was so much she did to this man, this weak man, because by this stage he was so weak emotionally and physically, he couldn't have fought her off even if he wanted to. And she says it's about this trance that he goes into. A trance, this man was so beaten, you know, I think mentally he'd cut off from it because he knew what was going to come. She constantly beat him anyway for something, even to say, if he said something she didn't like, she would beat him. She would get the rolling pin out and beat him. So, you know, and you'll see, because I'm going to put some clips in here of the police interviews, but we'll go back to the day of the arrest. So it was the 31st of March 2018, and she makes a phone call to the police 12 hours after this man had died. So he laid on the bathroom floor all night on his own, even though she was there and these children were there in this home No one rang the police. No one rang for help. No one went to the neighbours for help until 12 hours later. She actually finally then went to a neighbour and asked to use the phone, and she rang the police, and she said that her husband had died in the bathroom. So at first, you have got a man who is now disabled. He's 55 but looks 80, now found dead, laying on the bathroom floor, and had been left there for 12 hours. So of course, once the post-mortem had been done and the pathologist had looked at the body, it turns out that on the body, they knew then by the time of death was 12 hours prior, so it'd just been left. That alone in itself is very suspicious. 2, though, that the man had about 87 old injuries to his body. That I don't think the pathologist could believe it with the amount of injuries to this man. So the injuries were what the pathologist found within this 78 injuries, old injuries that they could tell, probably around 2 to 3 years old, but they say around 2 years old, some of these injuries, including fractures to his shoulder blade, to his spine and to his neck. And they found where she had either punched him in his neck, so his voice box was damaged. She done that to his neck, and thumb marks, so it looked like he had been strangled because the bone in the neck was cracked. So there was a lot more to this case than his wife was saying. So the police now thought, okay, we need to interview this woman. So I'm going to show you this clip before we go on, so you can see that on this woman's face and how she describes this man and how she describes his death in her own words, because there is no empathy there. There is no care. This was his fault, you see. So have a look at this.
First of all, I tried to sort of sort things out with him in sort of a bantering sort of way, and so if I hit you with a rolling pin, maybe you come out of your trance also, and then it did get, I did hit him a bit harder sometimes, and then but as I said, it wasn't that he sort of fell over and lost consciousness. So I punched him on his nose severely because I was so angry with him, but he didn't have such a big cut. He had just a small cut.
Do you feel that hitting him over the head with a rolling pin, with a hairbrush, using your hands and fists, is a appropriate reaction to him acting in that way, being in his strange moods?
It's more like this. Helping him to come out of some sort of peculiar trance. I can't say it's a trance, but it's sort of peculiar. Feeling strangely. I don't know. No. As I said, he walked a bit faster then. So I pushed him on the back, and he walked a bit faster then, and then he tripped over and fell, and he fell against the crate. There was a crate, and the crate got broken, and then he cut himself on the head quite badly. No.
Or was he or being aggressive towards you?
No.
Within your family, what would you say your role is? I don't know. I like to know what's going on, so, but I like to be informed as to what is going on. I don't like it when people talk behind my back, and I get upset when I feel that there's some sort of things going on that I'm not told about.
So do you feel that you're justified in hitting him like that? Still?
no, there is no justification for that. But it was like just trying to sort of reset something in him. So,
did he cower away from you? Was he scared of you? Do you see what I mean?
Oh, it was more like, so we had a chase around the kitchen table or something. It was more in, sometimes just,
Sorry, when you say
chase around the kitchen table, it's in a more sort of light-hearted way. And
okay. And how did that end up with you hitting him?
I don't know. It was just feeling offended that he didn't take what I said to him seriously.
And talk me through how that ended up you hitting him. I can't put in words to it.
So on the 4th of March, she was going to go to trial, and because after then this evidence had all come in, and then she'd given this interview, and the police wanted her to speak, I think, about this. They wanted her to have her say, to incriminate herself. But I think when you first look at these interviews, the first thing you notice is that she is so blasé about it. It's like, well, he wouldn't listen to me, and I just chased him around the table like it was some game. Well, it wasn't a game to him. It was a game to her, because to her this was normal. She'd done this for so long. This was normal, and I think in these tapes you can sort of see that she was explaining to these police officers something that she had done so regular. To her it was normal, but to them, I think, when their reactions on their face and the questions they were asking her, she finally realised, oh, well, maybe this isn't normal, and so not that her story starts to change, but her body language starts to change, where she then realises, this isn't going to go across like what I thought it would. And it didn't. So anyway, on the 4th of March, she was, they charged her with murder, and on the 4th of March she went to court. And the jury saw straight through her, really. But the problem is, with a lot of these cases, domestic abuse cases, is that, especially in this case, there wasn't really any evidence. Because when the post-mortem actually came back, it was about what he died from. Now, he didn't die specifically from the injuries that she had caused that night. He had died from pneumonia. So now the police have got a little bit of a problem. Now, we're trying to arrest her and charge her with murder. So now let's think about this interview with this woman with the police. Now, the police know she's murdered him, right? It's quite clear she's murdered him. But then the pathologist then comes back with a diagnosis of murder of pneumonia. So really, pneumonia and domestic abuse are two different things. Or are they? Because what happened was, if you have pneumonia, your body is usually so low, your immune system is so low, and if you've been beaten that much, you can get infections which can also create your body to not function correctly. So that could mean why he was getting these sort of seizure things that she said, he was going into a trance sort of thing, because the damage was already in the brain. She would hit this man over the head with a rolling pin or other objects around the home. Because as the police also were looking into this woman, they searched her home, and in her home there was so many old blood stains up the walls, on the ceiling. Now, if you've got blood stain on a ceiling, when you're looking at a crime scene, you're looking for blood spatter and stuff like this, and the directions it going and where it's coming from. If you've got it on the ceiling and down a wall, that means that when you've raised that rolling pin and you've hit someone over the head and you've drawn blood from someone over the head, and then you've raised it back up, the blood splatter then is going up the walls. Now, this wasn't just in one room where she said this incident took place. His blood splatter was in every room, on windowsills, on the walls, on the ceiling. Clearly, this man had been abused so much physically that the damage was already done. This last night of abuse, was the one that ended it, but it's not the one that killed him. It's all the others, and so it's very difficult to prove in a court of law that did she go out with the intent, you remember actus reus, mens rea, to kill this man. Was the intent to kill, or was it to seriously harm? Now, to prove murder, I've said before, it's very, very difficult. So yes, the action was there. She had the act of the murder was there. She had hit him with a rolling pin. But then you have the pathologist come back and said, no, this is not what killed him. What killed him, he died of, was pneumonia. So okay, you can't really do her for murder. Not if it's going to stick, but what you can then do her for, and you can then look at, is this Section 18 of the Offences Against a Person Act, and we spoke about this before, which holds just a bigger sentence as murder. This does, and this is what I think they done her for, and they got her on, because she caused him serious harm. She, I think her charge was one offence of wounding under Section 18 with intent. So the intent then couldn't be proved that she was wanted to murder him that night, even though that, you know, when you hit someone with a rolling pin and you have done for many months, I don't know what you expect is going to happen, but in a court of law, that's not enough. So the next best thing, the way to get this woman and to get her off the streets and to make her be punished for the crime that she's clearly committed, is then to use Section 18, wounding with intent. And that's what they did. And then the jury then found, with all the evidence coming in, and also her own testimony that she had given really on the police interview tapes, was enough then to convict her. And the judge then gave her a minimum of 16 years to life in prison. So I think the judge said that this was an ongoing abuse that Christopher had endured. Christopher's body was severely weakened by this continuous and relentless physical and mental abuse, that he contracted pneumonia because of that, and so that's why he died. And it was a terrible death, really. He died on his own, in his bathroom, on the bathroom floor. His children were not allowed near him or to get him help, and his wife did nothing to save him at all. Left him 12 hours to die. So let's now talk about this coercive control. Now, coercive control is also now a new law in 2015. December 2015 came out, because, as I keep saying, domestic abuse cases are very hard to prosecute for many reasons. They're very hard to prosecute, and so this coercive control element now has been brought into law, because now the government knows that we need to stop this domestic abuse. This is, especially now at this time when we're in a lockdown, and I've said this before, when people can't get away, when they can't get out of this situation, this now goes up and up and up. Domestic abuse goes up and up and up, because don't forget, domestic abuse is about the abuser. It's not about the victim. The victim has done no wrongdoing here. It's about the mentality, the mindset of the abuser. It's something they are lacking. So this, and sometimes it can be built up by pressure, it can be built up by any circumstance. And the problem is when you're in a lockdown and people are losing their jobs, and these people may have lost their jobs, the first people they're going to take it out on is the people that they are meant to love and live with. And so it's really important that if you are suffering from any abuse, that you say something, do something. And I'm going to put again on the end of this video, I'm going to put the helpline number for the male, for men and who are being abused, and that's up there. Okay, so make sure you use it. You don't have to stay in these relationships. And this this new law that is out is designed to, even if you're not being hurt physically but mentally, you know, which can do just as much damage. And so where then the victim may take their own life because of something the abuser has done, this law can now prosecute you under that. And I think it has, and we'll be looking at some of them cases later on when we come to it. So this coercive behaviour, it's about control. It's about the perpetrator controlling the person to an extent that they either harm themselves or do something to themselves, or are so mentally disturbed by the behaviour of the perpetrator that it leaves them unwell. And so this is a new law, and it's a good law because, you know, yes, we have laws, but the problem is with the law is that, especially when you have serious harm under Section 18, or you have murder, and you know, it's too late. So this law is brought in December 2015 to help protect people before it comes to that. So she got 16 years, okay? She got 16 years in prison, and that's when she got life, but she has to do a minimum of 16 years before she's eligible for parole. But this is a shocking case. This really is. And it's a case that I've you know, it's close to my heart, because I think if we don't stand up in the public and say something, and especially on these forums, and we, you know, social networks and stuff, to use these platforms to highlight these issues, nothing will change. And so I know a lot of my colleagues on here do it as well. But this, whatever we can do, and if you know someone that's being abused domestically, say something. If you are being abused, say something. You don't need to live like this. Say something before it's too late. So, this has been the very quick case of Donnelly, and I hope that you found this case interesting, and I hope that you share it out, and I hope it brings you some awareness of what's actually going on out there in the world today, and especially in England, and the statistics and the phone numbers and that I put up are just for the UK, and in any other countries or states you can easily find information on how to get some help if you are suffering with domestic abuse. So, you know what to do. Say it every time. Thumbs up if you like it. You know, hit that thumbs up button. You can subscribe on what Lacey puts up on the little logo up there. I know it's not up there, but I always say it anyway. And you know I like to have a chat about murder. So let's have a chat about murder. And this is murder. So this is, I think this should create some discussion even between you at home. So again, you can follow us on Instagram, and you can follow us on Facebook. So thank you for watching, and until the next time, bye bye.